Hello, my name's Ishan, and welcome to the first episode of Something Ain't Right. Today we have two guests. We have Justin. Justin, say hi.
Hi.
Justin's from California. He's from San Diego. And then I have another guest with us. His name is Rajen. He's my neighbor. Rajen.
Hello? Hey.
And this is my first podcast. We're gonna be pretty chill. We're just gonna talk about the past week. So the past week was pretty crazy. We've had George Floyd's death. It was, if you guys haven't seen the videos, kind of sad. It was basically on May 25th. George Floyd, who was an African American, was accused of paying for cigarettes with a forged $20 bill, and then the was called, and then the officer pinned him to the ground with his knee and just restricted his ability to breathe for 8 minutes, and then the video got leaked, and there was a huge public outcry. There was police riots, not riots, but protests started in Minnesota and then from cities across the country. And tomorrow I'm actually going to be attending a protest in my own city. So we want to touch on that. We also want to touch on the general term of all cops are bastards and what that really means and how it may be misinterpreted or what just generally what the role is. And lastly, we just want to talk about what can we do as young people to change that. So let's start off at the beginning. Um, did you guys see what happened in Lafayette Square in DC?
Oh, was that the when Trump went to his bunker, you want to do that church photo op, and so they just tear gassed everybody outside to get him away as fast as they could?
Yeah, did you see
Or is
that?
that something else?
Yeah, no, it is exactly that. It was okay. I shouldn't say it was funny, but I think for Trump it was kind of funny because obviously people got hurt and it was quite of a horrible thing, but the way Trump handled it was really funny because it was a peaceful protest, nothing was going on. And Trump was having a political rally, and within 5 minutes, Trump was like, "I'm gonna clear out Lafayette Square," and Lafayette Square is known for having protests all the time. It's one thing that's really popular about DC. And then he just had these I think he brought the Maryland National Guard there, and he told them, let's get these protests out of there. They threw tear gas and everything. And the ironic part was that he wanted to take a photo op for his campaign in front of what's it called, a church. And the funny part to me was that the church head, I forgot his name, the main minister, he's actually really supportive of the Black Lives Matter movement. And Trump made him relocate out of the church. And then when he actually took the photo in front of the church, he held the Bible upside down. So
God bless. God bless. Dude, people think that Trump's the literal fucking second coming or something. It's so funny. Dude, that's Jesus. He would hold the Bible upside down. Don't you know? Come on.
I don't know, I'm sure you guys saw on social media, everyone's just we're living in a police state right now because how quickly a peaceful protest turned into that. Um, One thing that I actually found really interesting about that was there was this tweet that Donald Trump had accusing the Iranian government of you should let their people protest, you shouldn't be breaking them down. It was peaceful protest. And
Oh
then
yeah, he was stop killing the protesters.
yeah, and then right when it
Yeah.
comes in front of his lawn, he just goes from 0 to 100.
Riot police are riot police have very strict doctrine. They have strategies and tactics that try and limit loss of life and stuff. But there hasn't really been a riot in America in a long time, so they're all just people just out of action and they're
I
horny to beat the shit out of people. So and then the National Guard isn't designed to put down a protest. They're designed to put down domestic terrorists and rampant looting when there's a hurricane or something.
one thing that I saw
So
was actually kind of interesting was the people that were the anti-rioters, they were actually not even DC police. Apparently Trump didn't even tell DC police until 30 minutes before because DC police protests happen all the time in DC. So DC police know how to handle situations really well. But Trump the majority of the riot police there weren't even DC police. So they didn't even know how to handle the situation in the first place. So that's why you saw so much like violence on the police side.
yeah, like each environment's different. Like if you don't actually know your population or what they're gonna do, then they just resort to like the most extreme measures because they just assume the worst or some shit like that.
Yeah, and like they like I don't know. One thing that I like, they were also wearing like military armor. Like it was I don't know. I think it's like if you dress someone as a soldier, they're gonna act like a soldier, right?
Yeah.
I
Like
saw.
they have the expectation that they're gonna get shot because they're wearing like level 3A Kevlar, which is like for troops in overseas. So
Yeah,
it's really depressing. Like the National Guard is like literally the Army Reserve. Like they're just the army except they're not outside of America.
they're just domestic. They're the domestic army, basically.
Yeah. Like they learn a lot of the same things. None of them are putting down a peaceful protest.
Yeah,
So like there's a video that I saw. Um, whether the guy died or not, I'm not really sure because I didn't do much research beyond it. But there was like members of this National Guard like in a parking lot next to this gas station somewhere, and they're all like crouching down, like several of them. And then like somebody shot at them, like just like one shot, and then they just like started shooting, just like incoherently
yeah.
into kind of like a crowd, and they just like killed somebody.
I'm not even surprised. Like
Like,
I saw
Oh,
like
oh,
yeah. What's up?
why would someone try to shoot them though?
I mean, like there's criminals out there, but like even if you're in the military, like and there's civilians around, you don't just start fucking shooting into the crowd to like try and kill the
Yeah,
guy. Like they didn't like from the audio you could tell like they didn't even ask like, oh, was anyone hit? Like their squad. They just like started fucking unloading. And it was just I don't know,
Do you see
pretty
like
fucked
stupid.
up.
even like the bullets they use, or like like the general like anti riot gear they use is actually really problematic because you know how they're called rubber bullets,
They're just
but
like yeah, big ass fucking grenades with like rubber tips on them,
yeah, they're like metal
basically.
grenades. Like it's like how gold plated stuff is, and
Yeah.
and apparently when you shoot them, right, you're supposed to shoot them at the ground first, and then you're supposed to shoot them at them from like 70 yards away. But like and like I think it was in DC, they were just shooting them right on the people, and it has like horrible damage to these people.
Yeah, rubber bullets are more or less just like if you're using a grenade launcher, um, except it's designed to like hit them. That's it. And like supposedly not kill them, even though you just like point it at them and you pull the trigger, like they're probably gonna get like some serious permanent injury from that.
Yeah. Do you see like what's it called? Maybe I'm wrong here, but like you know how chemical weapons are banned in international warfare?
Tear gas isn't a chemical weapon.
It isn't.
Tear gas is fine. It's not. Yeah, like every developed country uses tear gas as part of its like riot control. It's just that America uses it more. I don't know. Like it's like misinformation for people to say that it's illegal to use it. Like
Yeah,
Americans have used it in the past all the time, and no one's called them out. It's just that it's become a lot more widespread now, and then people realize that tear gas like even exists in the first place.
yeah. I saw that on social media, which is like tear gas is a form of chemical weaponry. I was a bit doubtful on that because
It's
uh,
chemical weaponry. It's just not like
it's
bad
not.
enough to be legalized. It doesn't kill people at all.
Yeah,
It really can't kill you. It just makes you feel like shit. Unless like you literally just put the grenade in your mouth and like you have the part where it expels gas like pointing down your
Yet,
throat, like you can't die.
yeah. Okay. I see what you mean. What do you guys think about like?
There,
Oh, what are you
yeah,
saying, Justin?
you go for it. I was just saying like there's this like American police switched kind of recently from using the term like non-lethal to describe stuff like rubber bullets and tear gas and tasers and stuff to like less than lethal or less lethal because it
Oh,
can still kill you. It's just less likely. So they just started calling it less lethal, which is like I don't know. I guess it makes them realize that there's harm, but it still hasn't helped.
it's still not the right way of thinking.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about? What are your thoughts on looting?
Uh,
Because I know it's quite controversial.
I think
is
they're
there
just
really anything
opportunists.
controversial about looting though? I mean,
I mean, a lot of
obviously
people are like
looting.
totally fine with like burning down the state. Um, there's a lot of like hidden anarchists who just haven't said anything until now. But I think the majority of looters are just like people who have no connection at all to like protests or black liberation movements, and they're just like, yo, the cops are fucking distracted with that protest over there. Let's just like break into this Walmart. Like that's different, I think, than the actual protesters. They're not the same people most of the
Yeah,
time.
I think one conversation I was having with my friends today is every time I brought up like the idea of like the Black Lives Matter protests have been happening, the instant thing they brought up was looting, and looting is bad, and I don't stand for it because the purpose is looting, and I don't know what to think about that because I think yeah, looting is happening, but I feel like it's kind of an irrelevant thing to talk about because like 95% of protesters or protests are non-violent and they're not looting. And then even if like there is economic damage going on, right? Like yeah, it's really unfortunate, but at the end of the day, like they're gonna have
Yeah,
insurance policies and like yeah, your store's gonna be broken down, but like if someone is dying, that's gonna be much worse. I don't know if that's the right analogy though, or the right way of thinking.
there's I think like the analogy that just like makes people accept it more, I think, is just if with for any protest or movement on this scale, there's going to be looting. I mean, it's not like a specific like black people thing. No one's like, I'm going to break into this like hardware store because of George Floyd. Like it could be something just as bad, like because like protests spawn based on like the magnitude of like the problem. Like if the government does something really really fucked up, then like people are going to loot, but also like riot at the same time. It just happens that this is like the biggest protest in history. Or I mean like not like besides the civil rights, like in recent history. It like widespread over the country.
So
It's
it's
just
more
a consequence of any sort of like social unrest.
so it's more like looting is inevitable, and it shouldn't be what we should be focusing on.
Yeah. I mean like obviously the police should try and stop it, but a lot of the like the initial looting, because it's kind of a wave, like if there was no looting to begin with, like there wouldn't be looting now. It's just like people were inspired to do it because they thought they could get away with it. A
Yeah,
lot of the initial looting was started by like undercover cops, like members of Antifa, just regular anarchists, and then white supremacist groups, like destroying windows and shit to try and like promote criminal behavior, and then they flee.
yeah, like putting bricks on the floor.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
true?
Did
They
you see
were
that
undercover
video?
cops?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they were wearing
like
like
they're
this like
unloading
yellow
bricks out
band,
of a
right?
truck. I don't know. It was weird. There's like a lot of footage out there of like really sketched shit just from undercover cops,
So do you feel
like
like that?
the day band stuff on their arms.
I feel like my largest issue on looting is not like the looting itself. Like yeah, looting is horrible, but it's the media coverage of it because like most protesters aren't looting, and even when they are looting, I feel like the media is making it seem like it's a huge deal and it's the forefront of this entire protest when it really isn't.
Yeah, like they should at least like say like before they say anything about looting, um, they should say like, oh yeah, by the way, the protests like reached a record size, like there's record public support, stuff like that, instead of like, holy shit, you guys, another In and Out just burnt down. Fuck, like what are we gonna do? Like, I don't know.
I
The
saw
media
this.
just it's just easier to get views and clicks by just being tragic.
Yeah, and that's like the issue with like modern news because like 30 years ago you'd pay the New York Times $30 and they would give you super accurate news coverage or the best they could. But now because all like they want clicks to get money, like ad revenue, they're trying to get you to click, not really get the most accurate news across.
Hmm.
One thing that I found actually really funny was in LA, um, there was basically a police car, and there was this video footage of a bunch of white people wearing masks lighting the police car on fire, and it shows like the black people aren't really starting the riots. There's a lot of white people that are instigating it in the first place. But um, I think it was CNBC that took a picture of it. Basically, there was one part right before the car lit on fire where a black guy kicked it. So
Oh
even the white people
no.
were the ones that were like putting the lighter fluid and breaking the windows. CNBC took a photo of the black guy kicking it, but that's not it. Like this guy like matched the time frames, and when CNBC took the photo, the fire wasn't lit yet. But the fire that CNBC like the photo that CNBC posted on their website, there was a fire in the car. So they literally like artificially edited the photo
They
to add a fire.
photoshopped it.
Exactly.
Dude, the man's kick was so strong he fucking combusted the whole car. It's insane. Can't believe it.
It's just
It's so dumb, dude. There's
it's
so much evidence that people have found just by data mining like a ton of forums and stuff for like white supremacists, or like there's a ton of white supremacist groups that are like, okay guys, you guys go to this city and then start breaking shit. and then like blame it on black people.
but that doesn't
Like,
get clicks.
ugh. Yeah, unfortunately.
I
Like,
feel like
ooh, white supremacist plot. Like,
I,
whatever.
I think that's one really cool part about citizen media, at least like through Instagram, through Medium posts, through Facebook. I feel like I get more reliable information about the protests than I do from watching NBC. Maybe that's not
Yeah,
a good take on it, but I feel like I've learned more about things. I just fact check it on social media, or
I saw this one.
on Google.
There's this one video of like, I think it's in Boston, like cops crawling on their car to like try and do something, and like people were like, "Look, they're breaking their own glass," but it ended up they were just like wiping away glass that was already broken, so it wouldn't be a hazard. But then it spread around social media pretty fast, but then it stopped suddenly. So I think like people caught on that it was not what it would seem to be. So, like, the only way I think you can get like permanent damaging misinformation about this stuff from social media is if you read it one day and then you stay off of it for like a week, because like a day later you'll get information that's like, oh, never mind, we were wrong or something, because people will own up to it on
Uh,
social media, but like the media won't do that.
yeah, yeah. I feel like it's actually the opposite, where people post on social media and they kind of forget about it. Well, I don't know if
Yeah,
it's
a
the
lot of
opposite.
people post and then forget, but if people who like scroll around and read a ton of stuff, sooner or later they're gonna find somebody that debunks something that should have been debunked, and then
Yeah,
they remember that, which is
that's,
good.
that's true. So I think one other way of thinking about it is like from when George Floyd's video got released to now, I think there were 17 other cases of police brutality on black people, and I'm pretty sure like police brutality cases have been going on for a really long time. So why do you think George Floyd's was a really big deal and not the other ones?
It
I
was
think
just
just
well
because of,
documented and
yeah,
it
it was
spread
really well
early.
documented. Like the camera was stable for like almost 9 minutes, just there and never really, um, there weren't like cuts or anything. And also just because like kneeling on the back of some guy's neck while he's like screaming for help is like
Yeah,
pretty
exactly.
graphic.
He had all the time in the world to get his knee off his neck, but he just stood
Yeah.
there and killed him.
I think like the only way this could have been worse for the police officers is if they just fucking shot him on the ground. But like literally any other handling of this, like any other police brutality case where it's not just like cops breaking into somebody's home and killing them, would be like, well, it's not, it's like, I don't want to say better because they all suck, but it's like better to look at, and so it's less like irritating to look at. Like oh, like they tased a guy like on the ground is not as bad as like just kneeling on some guy's neck for 8 minutes.
It
Yeah,
kind
it was
of
just so incriminating.
yeah,
Yeah, like the guy's like there, like you see like the officer just looking around with his knee on his
Yeah.
neck. Like no one's gonna say like, "Oh, I don't think he actually did it." Like it's him and he did it and it's obvious.
well, it kind of draws a parallel to I think what I'm thinking of is like Silent Spring by Rachel Carson because well at least in like the 1970s because she published this book about how disgusting the meatpacking industry was. It wasn't meatpacking. I'm not sure, but
Wait,
because of
who is this?
do you take A Push?
Yeah.
It was like this book that Rachel Carson made that was like the meat packing industry in America is so disgusting and it
I
caused the
feel like
EPA to be
so wait,
founded.
Silent Spring?
Yeah.
That was
Silent Spring was about air pollutants. It was about a chemical that was used for like pesticides and stuff that killed a ton of birds. So it was silent.
yeah, the meat packing thing was some other guy.
That's Upton Sinclair's The Jungle.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But like I think when you show like I think maybe a part of the human condition is like when you see something really disgusting, it makes you want to it gets you more enraged. I think that's just across everyone. There's one thing that I
Yeah.
posted on my Instagram story, which was a friend of mine saying, um, when you post videos on your Instagram of like George Floyd getting killed or aren't the I forgot his name, but the man who got lynched in Florida, do you think it's spreading you're spreading like violence towards black people? And she was afraid that when you spread violence towards black people, it's normalizing black violence. Like,
No,
if it, I mean,
no,
whether it's not like subconsciously, if that makes sense, because when you see
no.
black people getting hurt in front of you every single day, it makes you more likely to think that it's okay. Like it's like right now, Donald Trump is doing a lot of things that are kind of crazy. So it means stuff that would normally get media attention 10 years ago are no longer getting media attention.
Right,
Um,
but your someone's first reaction to seeing that video isn't like, oh, okay. It's just like what in the world am I watching? You know, like their immediate thought is that it's wrong.
I think it's kind of
I
like you're shifting the mean, right? Like, yeah, there's always like in like a statistical sample, like there's a mean, there's an average, but if you put a huge outlier, yeah, that outlier is gonna get a lot of attention, but it's still gonna shift the mean in one direction. So
I think like I I've seen a lot of like videos with like really like graphic stuff. I mean like sometimes like intentionally just because there's like morbid curiosity, but sometimes like I didn't want to see it. But I don't think that's made me hate it less just by seeing more of it. Like now I'm just more careful on like what I choose to see and stuff. Like I don't think I'm gonna be any less disgusted by like seeing like a cut up dead body in front of me than I would have been like 10 years ago.
Whoa.
Um, I'll just be able to be like, um, oh, I've seen this before, maybe, I don't know, but it's not gonna make it any less terrible. But I think like for people who haven't seen a lot of graphic stuff, like if you go on Live Leak a lot, then maybe like you're probably desensitized to it. But if you've never seen anything like that before, then like seeing it for the first time is going to be like the most effective. Like it's like people say with like drugs and stuff, like the only reason people stay addicted is because like you'll never have like a high that was as good as the first one or something, right? Like it all just goes downhill from the first one. So I think if you expose stuff like this to people who've never seen something like it before, then it's really, really helpful. And if you expose it to people who are like unfortunately have seen a lot of this before, it's helpful. It's just it has like diminishing returns on how angry they get.
do you feel like that kind of happens to police officers? Because if you look at the officers that were charged, I think one was Tao something, the other guy was Chowin. Chowin had
Yeah,
like 12 other like incidents of
yeah,
some
he's
police
killed
Yeah,
people
brutality,
yeah.
before.
and the other
Yeah,
guy had 7. So do you think like the role of a police officer, because you're dealing with like being rough with criminals all the time, or people that you're arresting, do you feel like that kind of shifts your moral spectrum, like shifts you on the moral spectrum?
yeah, it's like soldiers in war. Like once they kill enough people, it just becomes like duty only instead of like a complicated like thought process. But like I think again about the like exposure to graphic violence and stuff about black people. Let's say that you didn't ever like show people the video. I don't think they're gonna be any more angry than if they didn't see it, right? Like if they do see it, that's not gonna make them less mad, right? Even if they're desensitized to it, even if like I don't want it to become normalized, but even if it becomes normalized, it doesn't mean that like your outrage is gone now just
It
because you
just
saw the video. Like seeing the video doesn't make you less angry because you know the story behind it. That's what makes you angry.
it's sort of like it won't make you less angry, but it'll make you at best more angry.
Yeah, you have to like get more outraged by it if seeing the story itself would get you outraged, which is what some people want, right? Not any graphic content at all, just a story.
Right,
So
but what
that
about the
world,
next
it's like
video? After you see the George Floyd video, will you be more angry or less angry about the next video you see?
it's not about like being angry at the video though, it's about being angry at the situation behind it.
Yeah, at the situation.
So
I mean,
then,
then just posting any stories about black people dying, not even videos, would be normalizing
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So,
Just
I think
spreading
it's
it in
like a
general.
has to happen kind of thing.
do you feel like someone in the like in the black community would feel, and we're not none of us are black, so maybe we can't empathize with this fully, but do you feel like seeing someone of your own community getting killed on a regular basis on your friend's story or Instagram story, do you think that is kind of painful in some way?
Um, I think it'd be painful just because you're constantly reminded about it. But the thing is that the only risk of it being normalized exists because it in fact like it has been normalized. It's just that seeing the videos isn't normalized. But this behavior happens all the time, so it's normal. It's like whether people choose to see it or not. Like it's like ignorance is bliss, except some people just don't want to see graphic content.
Okay,
So I
that's
don't really
fair.
think it matters if like I mean, obviously, yeah, if it causes a black community harm, don't do it. But I think enough of them, like the majority of them, say like there's nothing really wrong with sharing the graphic content as long as people know before watching it that it might not be a pleasant sight.
like a graphic
I think the
content
people who are just
warning.
against sharing graphic violence in the first place might just be like, I don't want to ever say like too sensitive, but they might just be too sensitive, or just not willing to accept the fact that it does happen all the time. It's just that a lot of them don't have videotapes. That's it.
Yeah, and I think it also makes you question what about the ones that aren't recorded.
hmm I mean, if all of them were recorded, then there's a much bigger risk of normalizing the harm, but it happens way more than people think if they were thinking exclusively from what they've seen.
Yeah. Do you see like Minnesota, like the city of Minnesota or
Wait,
Minneapolis has
Minneapolis, yeah.
has not released the body cam footage yet. So maybe there could be more cases, just that cities are refusing to release those body cam footages, which is horrible.
Yeah, the whole like, I mean, I agree with like equipping all police officers with body cams, but I think there should also just be like complete mandatory disclosure no matter what. Unless like the body cam is like pressed up against like a document of like classified information. Like, I mean, what are you doing with the footage in the meantime, right? Like, are you like doctoring it? Like, it just makes people suspicious. They should
I
just
think
release it immediately.
I think it also just has to do with privacy to some degree, because if you're recording everyone at every time, like if anyone's from a police office getting recorded, I think releasing that openly might just have other problems.
Yeah, that's true. But I think in the instance of like some any sort of investigation is opened into a police officer, then the time frame that's being investigated, that clip should be released immediately.
Yeah, I agree.
Unless like you could determine for a fact that some people are just irrelevant to the video, so you should just crop them out of it.
Did you see the Asian police officer? I think it's Tao.
Yeah, he's
He
like
fled.
Hmong, which is from like parts of Southeast Asia.
He
He's a
fled.
dick.
He fled Minnesota.
What? Yo, hold
Yeah,
on.
Wait.
cause what's it called?
He's.
Um,
I thought he got arrested.
yeah. So basically, Chauvin got charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter, and then
Uh-huh.
the state of Minnesota decided to charge the other three police officers. And his lawyer was like, I don't know where he went. He just stopped responding to my phone calls.
Okay. Let me fuck. Oh, I don't know.
Wait, I don't see
They
it
all have
anywhere.
mugshots though in orange jumpsuits.
Really? I thought I saw it.
I don't.
Tao
I
fled.
don't.
We check it right now.
Yeah, they don't look like they feel guilt whatsoever.
It's just I was looking at the
That
videos.
seeing that really pissed me off, seeing the video and just like seeing an Asian person, like an East Asian person there,
A part of
just
your
made me disappointed.
community. A part of
Yeah.
your community. Yeah. I think I don't cry or tear up that often, but seeing the George Floyd video made me tear up, especially when he was calling out his mom's name. That really hit.
Just made me angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck Derek, dude. I hope like when he gets sentenced, well he should definitely get sentenced. When he gets sentenced, he gets like fucked in the ass by like 40 dudes in the shower at once, unwillingly.
My God.
Dude, okay, ex-cops in prison are like I think either number one or number two for the risk of violence, either tied or behind child predators. So he's gonna have it rough.
Oh
Oh
man.
yeah, they're behind bars, but the guys they put behind bars.
Yeah, they're behind bars with them, and he's gonna get fucked.
Good.
Good,
Oh
dude.
my God.
Dude, they
He
deserve
deserves
it.
it. Yep, he deserves that. You don't just like, what's he gonna do? Like kneel on everybody's neck at once in prison? Like that's not gonna happen.
Oh my.
What a fucking dick.
So what do you think?
Jesus.
Like the other three police officers, they were bystanders, right? So they basically were complicit in what happened. But do you think they should be charged the same way?
Yeah.
I either here's what I think. Like you should either charge them all the same, or charge them at Derek Chauvin's current um charge, and then raise Derek Chauvin's charge by degree.
I
Because
think
I think he should be held more responsible just because he's the one who did it. Like I'm pretty sure in like in any murder or like any crime, like um if you have like 4 people robbing a bank and they're all armed, except one of them actually kills somebody, but the other 3 could have stopped it, but they didn't. I'm pretty sure in like all of those cases, the guy who pulls the trigger gets it worse.
Yeah, but these guys are police officers.
I think
Yeah, so I don't think they should downgrade anybody's conviction. I think they should just raise Derek Chauvin's
I think
after they match.
Yeah, it could
I
be.
I think one thing I'm afraid about Derek Chauvin is that like first degree and second degree murder you have to show intent, right? That this
Yeah,
person,
they're afraid of losing the case
yeah,
Yeah.
just to a jury.
yeah. It's just for the listeners. Like first and second degree murder, you don't have to show intent. Like you have to show that the person who murdered someone else had intent to kill them. But for third degree murder, you just show they were too aggressive or they did something
Yeah.
wrong, which caused them to kill someone else.
Dude, what if they dismiss all the black jury?
Oh my God.
God, that's not gonna happen though.
Yeah, jury duty's complicated now, right? Like because of like coronavirus and also just like people. I don't know. I read somewhere that jury duty's just getting weird in the past few months.
Because no one wants to go, right?
Yeah.
Said no one ever wanted to go though.
Also,
Yeah.
I think there's a chance, but it's non-zero, but incredibly small, just because I think Derek Chauvin's a dick. But I think like there's a very small chance that he thought that George Floyd would survive, and that George Floyd is just exaggerating when he says that he can't breathe.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
just
I mean,
I don't
either
think
just
he
like
was
If someone is
trying to go.
unconscious for 3 minutes, though, like that's a good
yeah,
indicator.
but
You should
but the
take your.
thing is that like Derek could have just been like, oh well, now he's just quiet or something.
I
Like
think.
there's a lack of empathy combined with like a lack of like basic human like biology, um,
I mean,
and not knowing that you can speak while not being able to breathe.
one thing I was looking at on the Minnesota. So a lot of police districts have actually banned putting knees on someone's neck because of stuff because of like what happened to George Floyd. But in the Minnesota, in the Minneapolis, like guidelines for a police officer, it says you're only allowed to put your knee on someone's neck if they're actively resisting. So in the
Yeah.
video, he was refusing to get into the car because he thought it was too claustrophobic. But he really obviously stopped actively resisting, and he still kept his knee on his neck. Even like if you look at the video, he only took his knee off the neck when the EMS officer was like, get up, move.
Yeah.
So I think this is a great transition to talking about qualified immunity and how the judicial system supports aggressive police officers. So if you guys don't know, qualified immunity was something coined by the Supreme Court, and it's a system that's across all countries, but I think the U.S. interprets it very differently. But it's basically saying that it's quoted as saying all cops but the plainly incompetent or those who knowingly violate the law should be arrested or should not be arrested. So saying unless you're a cop that was super aggressive or violated the law with like really with full intent, you should be immune from the judicial system. So, do you think that the U.S. interpretation, or the way that U.S. courts interpret it, is too? I think it's very clear that it's a bit too liberal, the way the U.S. is interpreting it. But how do you think it'll play in the court case with Chavez and the other 3 police officers?
Qualified immunity is like, it deals incredibly big with discretion and like what agencies have the capacity to like execute stuff under their discretion. Um, I think like ending qualified immunity will be difficult, but it's like since there's like so many police departments in America, and all of them have their different philosophies. So some have a lot more space for qualified immunity to intervene, and some don't, because some a lot more restrict what their cops can actually do or not do. Like San Diego ended the practice of the carotid artery chokehold like yesterday or something because of this whole thing. But I think when they like charge the cops, I don't think there's like any police law or policy anywhere in the country that says that police officers are required to, or like they even promote this at all, to like intervene on behalf of the like the victim, I guess, like the person who's being arrested or something, in order to uphold like police practice. And since there's no like existing precedent for that, then I think that qualified immunity in this case actually like might not be applied, because there's like a very clear exception.
It was really clear
Saying
that
yeah,
he
this is too much.
was plainly incompetent in
Yeah.
the law. I think one thing that's something to notice is if you look at like I saw this in a I think a New York Times video, but the way the Supreme Court defined qualified immunity was really vague. So as time went on, it's been interpreted much more with a larger scope in what is okay and what is not okay.
Hmm.
So it means that a lot of cops, like the 12 other charges that Chavez faced, he was able to get away with it.
Well, are you sure that like those other like complaints for Chauvin were about like I don't think they made it to court. I thought they were just sealed by the department.
You might be right there.
Just because I think the department just has the authority to do that because like police unions are super strong and their hierarchies are like super strong. Like
Yeah.
there's a very high chance they just shut it down. They're like, yeah, this complaint is just whatever. I don't think they have any obligation at all, like from like a policy standpoint, to actually like they might have quote unquote like considered the complaint because that's all they have to do, and then considered that it's bullshit and just threw it out. Like I feel like that's just what happened within the department.
Probably right.
Like as long as you read the complaint, that's enough because you can't force them to abide by every complaint's wishes. Otherwise, like the police department would be changing like every day. But you also can't. You also have to have them at least consider it. But them considering it could just really be nothing.
There's no outside panel that really reviews whether these complaints are really
Yeah,
legitimate or
they
not.
just decide that they all suck, unless like it was like really, 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 really blatant.
I saw this one thing which is when they have increased accountability regulation, like I think in 2015 there was the riots and protests in Baltimore. Like, I think it was Freddie Gray, and a lot of police districts increased accountability, but nothing really changed because the whole system where police can basically check themselves in many cases means that if there is increased accountability laws, it doesn't really actually turn into tangible outcomes.
Yeah, it's you can't like institute like new police standards like really nationwide, except for like body cams or like equipment stuff, because the departments are so varied from each other. Like
So
some do like community-based stuff where they try and select potential recruits from within the communities that they will be policing. Um, but the average police academy is what, like 6 months? Um, like you have to spend more time in training for like a lot of other jobs where you don't have the authority to kill people.
yeah,
So
I think what was I gonna say? I think what is one way that you guys think that we could hold police districts or police officers accountable if the current like if the laws or that were passed over the past decade haven't been as effective as we want them to be?
I think police unions should just be fucked. Just like take the hammer and smash them apart. I mean, it's not great relying on like vigilante justice, which would be in the form of like cops turning on each other, like because some of them actually care. But that'd be a big step from where we are now, where they just don't speak up at all. Um, but in terms of enforcement, like having like independent review boards is hard. Um, like vetting people to be like, hey, your brother's like distant, like I don't know, cousin's roommate is like on the police department, so you can't be on this board. Like that kind of stuff is like a mess.
I feel like the only
So
accountability that we've seen is literally at the highest level possible, which would be like through state senate, or like mayors. Like in LA, um, Eric Garcetti defunded the LAPD by $200 million, but that doesn't actually address the lack of accountability by the police officers itself. It's putting less money towards the problem.
yeah, like they're just gonna spend their money buying the stuff that kills people, and not spend their money on like a lot of the expenses when it comes to like operating like any force for like enforcement, like be it the military or the police, is just like really expensive gear, which happens to be stuff that doesn't kill people. Um, like cool technology to check people's plates faster or something is expensive. Not as expensive as like, buying another Glock for like another officer.
I saw something which was the riot gear that the DC police officers had or the DC police was could 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 pay for 55 social workers. I don't know like what the time frame was, but it just goes to show how expensive that gear is.
Yeah, military equipment is incredibly expensive. Like, um, with like, I think there's like this Eisenhower quote. Like, I mean, obviously the prices have changed since then, but he said something like, um, buying a new, or Gerald R. Ford, I don't fucking remember. Like, buying a new aircraft carrier could, like, you could instead build like quite a large number of like new middle schools or like miles and miles and miles of pavement or stuff like that. But they choose not to.
I saw this one thing which was the military has a lot of waste. It's super. It's like there's a lot of lobbying going on there, and there's like a lot of
Yeah.
like multi sellers, like one like monopolies or monopoly. I think that's a better way of saying like only one person they can buy from. So the average stapler that the U.S. Marines uses costs $450, and it just shows how much waste there is in the military.
I mean,
Oh, they just buy from Staples, dude.
like the military has extreme qualifications for like any sort of gear. It also does help with the supply chain though. Like the the U.S. military is obsessed with logistics, which is like the only reason why we're able to like take over like the entire planet. Um, they have like if you wanted to place orders at Staples, for example, they could just treat you like any other customer, and then you might not get them on time or something, and then some
I
office
s-
of the military somewhere wouldn't be able to staple your papers, and they'd be fucked.
but it's still like
Like
still a
they're super
20,000%
specific.
like
I
upsell.
think it's necessary, but yeah, the prices are really dumb, and we should just downsize the military in general. But the reason why they have so much waste in this form, I think, is like not a bad reason.
I think it also has to do
Um,
with
what
lobbying.
what is waste though is just operating
I
too
think
much
it's
shit everywhere.
also has to do with a lot of lobbying that happens in the military because what's it
Yeah,
called? They usually just have one seller they could buy it from, and because it's only one seller and they know the process of changing sellers is going to be so expensive, they could upsell it at such a high cost.
there's every single like expensive piece of equipment for the military, like be it like actual arms like rifles to aircraft and vehicles, comes from competitions between like the same five or so like defense contractors every single year for like the last century,
Yeah,
and
both
they're
of
just being
Grumman,
fed
Boeing,
money. Yeah,
Lockheed
just to
Martin.
compete, like Raytheon, Lockheed, Boeing, like just to compete. Um, they just get paid, and they just develop a product, and if it doesn't work, oh well, like they got their money and their press,
Yeah,
so
and
it's just bidding wars.
I saw like I think it was Boeing or maybe Northrop Grumman, which was they're building the F-35, and their entire
F-35 is Lockheed.
yeah. So Lockheed they were built they build it in a way where they want to basically maximize the amount of jobs they're building and making in different states. So even
Uh-huh.
when they don't have a ready prototype, they go ahead and manufacture this prototype that isn't even tested. And when that prototype fails, they pay people to take apart what they've already built. So it's just a lot of ways, but they create jobs, which is why Congress people are happy.
Yep. The Defense Department's the largest employer in America by extension to its contractors too. And it's just really depressing. Like the F-35 project's been a huge waste. Like I don't think there's a single country in the world which thinks that it really is like the future of American aerospace.
It
They
isn't.
tried to do too many things at once.
It's also
It
like
was really nasty.
it's too. They spent too much money on it. They're just afraid of failing it.
Yeah, it's too big to fail. Just like the
Yeah.
banks. God
Okay,
damn
so
it.
let's do one last transition. So, back to what happened over the past week. So, I've been hearing a lot on social media. All cops are bastards, or ACAB, and I think I think it gets a lot of bad rep because people assume bastards is meaning like the cuss word definition of it. But I think what people are this is the way I interpret it. It's bastard as the other second definition, which is as illegitimate, like the king's son is a bastard.
Yeah, like bastard child.
Yeah, and I think all cops are, and I think people when people hear all cops are bastards, they think, oh no, there are good cops and bad cops. And I don't think that's not the purpose behind the statement. The role, I think it has a two. I think it's attacking the role of a police officer in two ways. First is that the role itself is a position of authority, because like compared to like like British police officers, all police officers in America have guns in their holsters. While in like Australia, no one has a gun on them. You have to call a special type of police officer to get a gun. So they're more militaristic, right? There's a qualified immunity, which means the law protects them. There's like police unions, which means the role itself as a police officer is a position of authority, which makes them kind of illegitimate or corrupt. But the second one is like, even if a police officer is super, super nice, they are still required to support laws that are racist. They're supposed to stop strikes. They're supposed to do really bad things. And if they disagree or refuse to follow through, they get fired. So the overall term of, I think when a lot of people hear all cops are bastards, they just assume that you're making an overgeneralization about the humans that are cops, not the role as a cop.
Yeah, there's like, and then people say like, oh, what about the officers who speak up? I mean, speaking up is great, but until they refuse to um, enforce a law that they think is unjust and then face the consequence, which is being fired, um, then they're still a cop. So all the quote unquote like good cops, if they don't speak up against a bad system, they're a bad cop. And then when they get fired, um, and they start doing good stuff, then they're not a cop anymore. So they don't even fall into their qualification of all cops are bastards.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's entirely like dependent on the definition of like a police officer in America, which hasn't changed for forever. So I think it's totally fair if call them all cops are bastards. It's just like there's so many people who base their experience only on like what they have heard from their friends and family, and so many of them are like, "Hey, my uncle's a police officer and he's a really nice guy." I mean, who fucking cares? Like you can be like super nice, and then when the president is like, "All right, boys, tear gas like that baby, you do it," then you're not very nice then, but every other moment you're nice. Like I don't
Exactly.
want to make like a Hitler comparison because those are fucked up, but Hitler was a vegetarian because he really loved animals and he cared a lot about his wife. Sounds like a family man, except for all the fucking millions of people that he killed and like was responsible for.
Oh my
I don't know.
god.
You can't just judge people based on like how nice they are to you. Like imagine being like the guy who was wrongfully arrested by your nice uncle cop. Like he probably fucking hates him just because of like his experience with the police officers is really shitty. Just because he's a cop, not because he was a guy at that moment. He was an officer. He was a different breed basically.
Exactly. I think that's what a lot of people ignore, and they take the statement on face value and not the actual.
Yeah. Same with like Black Lives Matter. People are like, oh, well, are you saying white lives don't matter? Like, no one fucking said that. But read into it however much you want to. I don't know.
I think it just reflects. I don't want to say how lazy they are, but I think it gives me an idea how lazy they are. Instead of doing the research, instead of educating themselves, they are. And I think I was talking to my debate coach about this, and she's half Asian, she's half black, and a bunch of other things. But she says some people are not educated, and you can't stop that, right? There's gonna be people who are just gonna be posting stuff as an uneducated individual, but if you have access to take 12 APs in high school, if you have access to do like to have a computer at home, I don't think you have an excuse to not educate yourself on this type of stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think call out culture, like, yeah, it hurts if you're getting called out, but I'm all for it because it addresses the people who are too lazy to educate themselves about important things that are going on culturally.
I think call out culture is great. I just don't agree with like a lot of cancel culture. But
I
like
don't agree
call out
with that.
culture is wonderful. Like, um, like people are like, "Hey, why are you coming after me?" I was like, "Well, like you've had more than a decade to figure out why you're wrong. You just decided to push that off, so we're making you do it now. Like, why not? Like, hold people accountable to, especially coronavirus. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what other, are you like out all day? Because you shouldn't be. Like, we'll call you out for that. But if you're in all day, then you should be doing something productive. And if you're not, we'll call you out on it. I think
Exactly.
it makes total sense.
One thing that I was actually thinking about was one thing that came to mind was Blackout Tuesday, and you probably heard about that too, even if you're on the West Coast. And it's the idea that people just post a black photo on their Instagram and hashtag Blackout Tuesday. And a lot of people didn't like it because, well, for two reasons. First, it means that information about protests, information about how to donate, that's getting hidden away because there's these black photos all over social media. But the second one was one that I think a lot more people or implicitly thinking is it's kind of lazy in my opinion because and maybe this is the wrong way of thinking about it. I feel like if someone's posting a black photo on Instagram, they're putting the minimum amount of work to say, "Hey, I'm on the right side of what's going on."
Yeah, I have like subconscious dislike towards Blackout Tuesday because like in my mind like everybody's a virtue signaler until they show proof that they aren't one. So like the people who post it, but then at the same time are posting like a ton of information on their stories or something, or like showing receipts that they've donated, like I'm fine with that. But yeah, virtue signaling makes me mad. But the original intent behind Blackout Tuesday isn't that you post a black square. It's just that you don't post anything, or at least
Yeah,
anything that you would normally post, like a picture of yourself and your friends or something.
exactly. It's
But
meant
like, I
to.
guess people took the wrong idea from it. They just think it's about a black square, and then they think they're like contributing.
I think there's something that Eric Andre got. Like Eric Andre's a comedian, and he said
Yeah,
something on his story which was, "Don't attack people for their anti-racist messaging. For messages to get across,
Ishan.
you have to like not be
Fuck,
not
I cut
accuse
out.
people." And
Wait,
I
yeah, my Discord just like froze for a minute. Sorry.
nah, you're all good. I think
Alright.
that got me thinking, which was when you accuse people of saying you're being performative when you're posting this Blackout Tuesday photo, it seems like you're kind of excluding people from the movement. I think a part of human nature is that you want to be part of a community. And when you see people who are excluding other people because of the way they're supporting the Black Lives Movement is wrong, that irks me a bit. And I think this is maybe because of my own community, because at least in my high school, there was a girl who basically, she was Asian, and she basically, if you commented on her post, like if you commented on her post, which was like a video of a protester calling a police officer short, she would call you a short Asian boy because you were disagreeing with her. And I think that type of aggressive nature kind of makes people less likely to learn more about the movement, and also they're more likely to just stick to their beliefs and not change it.
Wait, so she's Asian, and to insult people, she would call you a short Asian boy?
Yeah,
What?
if you
That's
like,
fucked
it's
up.
I think maybe this is my viewpoint, but I feel like you should
Like,
still
that's
be.
just like destructive to being Asian. Does she stand up for Asian rights or not? Like, I feel like she definitely doesn't, dude, at that point. That's like if you're black and you insult like your black friends by like saying stereotypes like,
She
or like
said that
negative
she
stereotypes.
said
Like,
this
oh, I
one
bet you commit crime.
she said this one thing that kind of irked me, which was if you say something, I'm gonna criticize you. Unless you're a pretty girl, then I won't criticize you. Unless you're a lesbian pretty girl, then I will criticize you. And I think I think maybe this is just like she adds
That's
that
so stupid, dude.
she's so for the Black Lives Matters movement, and then at the same time she's being homophobic. And I think the dichotomy between one personality and the other kind of irked me when I saw it.
Kinda.
It definitely irked me.
Yeah, there's like the debate between like how hard a movement should gatekeep itself. Like, um, but there's no. It's not like you get everybody in Black Lives Matter into a room and you ask them like, okay, who do we let in and who do we not let in? Because that's just not how it works today.
Yeah,
Um, it's. I mean, like, I wouldn't want that kind of person to like support Black Lives Matter, but at the same time, like people who don't know her personally and know that like she's a bitch or something, like they're gonna think it's positive and it's gonna help them.
I
Oh
think
my God.
I think it shows a general issue behind a lot of like leftist movements, which is people. There's like progressive, there's liberals, and there's like a whole spectrum on the left. And I feel like a lot of people who are more left tend to exclude people who are more moderate, even if they share generally the same beliefs on certain things. So it makes people feel
Yeah,
excluded,
like
and
they'd rather gatekeep than actually win, like in like a practical standpoint, just by being more popular.
exactly. And
Yeah.
a part of movements is bringing people together. Part of the human condition is like you want to be part of a larger community, and just excluding people or calling them a short Asian boy because you think they're wrong is not going to educate them and not going to make them change their opinions. They're just more likely to stick to.
Yeah, like people just like so many extremists now just love being divisive just because like there's no virtue in being divisive, but they think there is. They're like, okay, well, if you disagree with me, then I'm entirely against you. Or like, if a conservative person asks them a question like, "Hey, I don't understand why you say Black Lives Matter. Can you please help me?" and then they're just like, it's not my responsibility to educate you, and they just block them. Like now they're never gonna ask for help or to like make themselves less ignorant. They're just gonna fucking hate you forever, and they're gonna go
Exactly.
vote for Trump in November. Like this is your fault. Like you were being like a dickhead about it. But they don't care. They're like, oh yeah, well they can go vote for Trump however they want. That's not my problem. But then they
It is your
complain when Trump
problem.
wins.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
like
think it's if
come on.
someone, I'll try my best to educate people, and I'll try my best to be really nice about it because I think that's the kind of person I am. But I think if you're getting aggressive at people who are just like, yeah, maybe it's someone's job to be educated about certain things, but if your first response is just like act aggressive because you think you're right and they're wrong, then I don't think that's the right way of approaching it.
Yeah, like people forget that it's not hard to change people's minds now, but they think it's just impossible because like they themselves refuse to ever have like a discussion. They just like engage in just echo chamber behavior like all day long.
Exactly.
So
If you
they're like, oh
surround
well, they're
yourself,
probably never gonna listen to me, so what's the point? But they probably will.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
what Eric Condon said. It's just ego and bullshit. Um, One last thing. I think it's almost 1 a.m. here. The podcast is getting pretty long. I want to end on one last thing. So, a really big point about MLK's protests was that they always had demands associated with them, which was let's try to achieve something. I really can't speak too much to that. But a problem with like the Black Lives Matter movement is that it's really decentralized. There isn't a center group creating demands. So we've seen change happen, like in LA. They defunded the police. They got rid of their curfew. I think I got an email from Berkeley today. They got rid of their curfew. I just San Diego got rid of their policies on neck holding or like putting your knee on someone's neck. But what change do you actually think is going to happen realistically? And what should we be expecting from politicians? Because Obama had this huge spiel about how we're going to have gun reform after the Sandy Hill shooting. Or Sandy, I forgot the exact school name. And
Sandy
nothing happened.
Hook.
Sandy Hook. And nothing ever happened. So what do you think we should expect from our politicians? And what do you think will happen?
Um, I don't think there's gonna be like any nationwide change. This is just gonna be something to look back on in like 5 years when they're like, hey, do you guys remember George Floyd and all those protests? Let's bring that back. And then that again becomes another 5 years later memory, like to look back to. Um, just because like yeah, like the movement doesn't really have goals. I've seen some stuff like on Reddit, which is just way too niche to be applied to the public. They just had um like like the Hong Kong protests, like they had like a
Yeah.
very clear like list of like 5 demands that they wanted from mainland China. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people online kind of copied that and made it American, and then that's been floating around like the 5 basic demands of um Black Lives Matter and like the anti-police movement. But that's not what I'm seeing like people talk about. They're just talking about like look, the protester was like shot by a rubber bullet and now he lost an eye. Like, what are you even protesting for now?
I think that's what
Against police brutality, like how fucking much does the police department need to like defund itself for you to settle down? Like it
yeah.
just pick a goal that's more realistic and also affects more people so you can legitimately make progress so that this protest doesn't burn out in a week.
I think that's something I think LA took a really good approach to this, which was like even the LA riots that happened in the 1990s and it caused
Yeah,
like $1 billion of damages. And
the
I
Rodney
think
King killing.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
it's bad.
Eric Garcetti knew like how damaging that is. So like I think 100 million or 200 million to damages, he just conceded. And I think
Hmm.
um one thing that is probably going to be a reason why this is going to be what we're going to forget about after like it's going to come back up in 5 years because it's just going to be judicial like it'll be like police branches saying oh we're going to have more accountability and they're going to put whatever laws are going to put in place but again because of unions because of no accountability nothing's going to happen or no like third party organizations keeping them in check.
Yeah, that's true. I think if there's going to be any change, it has to come from the top. People protesting won't really do anything.
I think just like protesters need to organize themselves, get leadership, um, agree to be peaceful, and will also condemn violence, not just agree to be peaceful, and stay out for a long time. Like the American government is more receptive than the Chinese government, um, but the Hong Kong protesters are still out there, and it's been a year or more. It's been a long time, and they're still there. So I think like they just need to stick with it because I think a lot of these protesters might just be one-time protesters, like they're scared away by tear gas, so they don't really go back. But their friends do. So it's kind of like the system's just like eating them and spitting them back out. But I think they should stay out there for a longer time so that the media eventually can only cover these protests and not anything else. And then at that point, they can have some sort of organization.
Exactly. This year has been pretty crazy, like, given COVID, Trump, and the protests. There's this one quote I saw from Lenin, which was, um, "There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen." And I think we're living in the few weeks where decades happen, because this is going to be something that's going to be something we're going to look back on for a while.
Was he talking about the October Revolution?
Yes.
Shit. Kind of don't want that to happen.
I think it just goes to show that.
Yeah, that's a pretty good quote, and definitely like that's like okay, this is no 9/11, but those were what like probably the most impactful few weeks in the last 20
Last,
years,
yeah,
I feel. Yeah.
it was 9/11, and I think this year as a whole is going to be really impactful. But I think right now it's going to be really impactful, and I think what's it called? I think there's going to be a second wave of COVID just because of the whole people getting together over the past week.
Yeah, the
Oh,
data
fuck.
already shows there's going to be a resurgence from states that have started reopening.
Yeah, like most viruses like this come back worse in the fall and the winter time.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. These, like,
shit.
what UNC is doing is that UNC is starting their school a month earlier and ending 2 months earlier and getting rid of all breaks because they think it's going to get back up in fall and December, like December and winter.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah,
Just so they don't have to deal with that going back online bullshit again.
yeah. It's just it's a crazy place, man. So, something ain't right about the place we live.
Yeah, something ain't right.
And
It's a little bit,
I think with that, I'll end the recording. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys. I'll see Justin when he comes to Georgetown.
yes, August sometime.